All right, so we are on chapter 3, part 2. We read a little bit of part of chapter 3 last week. So remember, Lily and Rosalind are walking. They got dropped off near Tiburon. They had 3 miles to walk, and they're hungry. And Lily just realized it's a Sunday. And so for right now in our current time, that probably wouldn't be that big of a deal. But during this time, that means that there aren't going to be many, if any, places open where they can buy any food, except for maybe an actual restaurant. And then Rosalind brings up the point of where are we going to sleep, and that nobody's going to take a white girl and a black girl and offer them a room in a motel, which Lily gets kind of upset about because she's like, well, the Civil Rights Act is passed, so what good was that? And Rosalind says, yes, that's true, it's law, but that doesn't mean that we can make people do it quite yet. People are still going to be upset. They're not going to be happy about it. So Lily is contemplating all this still, and they're still walking towards town. And Rosalind, of course, just makes her comment, too bad there's not a church around here where we could steal some fans. So clearly, she is not maybe... She probably realizes that what was wrong, but she's trying to make a little bit light of the situation, perhaps, and maybe she just really does want a fan. So here we go, page 61 in your books. From far away, the store on the edge of the town looked about 100 years old, but when we got up to it, I saw it was actually older. A sign over the door said Frogmore Stew General Store and Restaurant since 1854. General Sherman had probably ridden by here and decided to spare it on the basis of its name, because I'm sure it hadn't been on looks. The whole front of it was a forgotten bulletin board. Studebaker service, live bait, Buddy's fishing tournament, Rayford Brothers ice plant, deer rifles $45, and a picture of a girl wearing a Coca-Cola bottle cap on her head. A sign announced a gospel sing at the Mount Zion Baptist Church that took place back in 1957, if anyone wanted to know. My favorite thing was the fine display of car tags nailed up from different states. I would have liked to have read every single one, if I'd had time. In the side yard, a colored man lifted the top of a barbecue pit made from an oil drum, and the smell of pork lathered in vinegar and pepper drew so much saliva from beneath my tongue, I actually drooled onto my blouse. A few cars and trucks were parked out front, probably belonging to people who cut church and came here straight from Sunday school. I'll go in and see if I can buy some food, I said. And snuff. I need some snuff, said Rosalind. While she slumped on a bench near the barbecue drum, I stepped through the screen door into the mingled smells of pickled eggs and sawdust, beneath dozens of sugar-cured hams dangling from the ceiling. Remember how I talk about telling you to write sensory details, give me details about things in your writing? That's what this is, sensory details. It smelled like pickled eggs and sawdust. She could see the sugar-cured hams dangling from the ceiling. Those are the details that I want to see in your writing. The restaurant was situated in a section at the back, while the front of the store was reserved for selling everything from sugarcane stalks to turpentine. May I help you, young lady? A small man wearing a bow tie stood on the other side of a wooden counter, nearly lost behind a barricade of Scoopernog jelly and sweet fire pickles. His voice was high-pitched, and he had a soft, delicate look to him. I could not imagine him selling deer rifles. I don't believe I've seen you in here before, he said. I'm not from here. I'm visiting my grandmother. I like it when children spend time with their grandparents, he said. You can learn a lot from older folks. Yes, sir, I said. I learned more from my grandmother than I did the entire 8th grade. He laughed like this was the most comical thing he'd heard in years. Are you here for lunch? We have a Sunday plate special, barbecue pork. I'll take 2 of them to go, I said. And 2 Coca-Colas, please? While I waited for our lunch, I wandered along the store aisle, stocking up for supper. Packages of salted peanuts, buttermilk cookies, 2 pimento cheese sandwiches in plastic, sour balls, and a can of red rose snuff. I piled it on the counter. When he returned with the plates and drink bottles, he shook his head. I'm sorry, but it's Sunday. I can't sell anything from the store, just the restaurant. Your grandma ought to know that. What's her name, anyway? Rose, I said, reading it off the snuff can. Rose Campbell? Yes, sir, Rose Campbell. I thought she only had grandboys. No, sir, she's got me too. He touched the bag of sour balls. Just leave it all here, I'll put it back. The cash register pinged, and the drawer banged out. I rummaged in my bag for the money and paid him. Could you open the Coke bottles for me? I asked. And while he walked back toward the kitchen, I dropped the red rose snuff in my bag and zipped it up. What'd she just do? Stole the snuff. She's not going to pay for it. Why would he have to open those Coke bottles, right? You just twist it off, don't you? Remember, though, in this time, you would need a bottle opener in order to open them. So that's what he was going to get, the bottle opener to open the Coke for her. Rosalind had been beaten up, gone without food, slept on the hard ground, and who could say how long before she'd be back in jail or even killed? She deserved her snuff. I was speculating how one day, years from now, I would send the store $1 in an envelope to cover it, spelling out how guilt had dominated every moment of my life, when I found myself looking at a picture of the Black Mary. And I do not mean a picture of just any Black Mary. I mean the identical, very same exact one as my mother's. She stared at me from the labels of a dozen jars of honey. Black Madonna honey, they said. The door opened, and a family came in, fresh from church. The mother and daughter dressed alike in navy with white Peter Pan collars. Light streamed in the door, hazy, warped, blurred with drizzles of yellow. The little girl sneezed, and her mother said, "Come here, let's wipe your nose." I looked again at the honey jars, at the amber light swimming inside them, and made myself breathe slowly. I realized it for the first time in my life. There's nothing but mystery in the world, how it hides behind the fabric of our poor browbeat days, shining brightly, and we don't even know it. I thought about the bees that had come into my room that night, how they'd been part of it all, and the voice I'd heard the day before saying, "Lily Melissa Owens, your jar is open," speaking as plain and clear as the woman in navy speaking to her daughter. "Here's your Coca-Colas," the bow-tied man was saying. I pointed to the honey jars. "Where did you get those?" He thought the tone of shock in my voice was really consternation. Consternation. I bet you haven't heard that word before. Write that one down on your vocab list. I know what you mean. A lot of folks won't buy it because it's got the Virgin Mary pictured as a colored woman. But see, that's because the woman who makes the honey is colored herself. What's her name? August Boatwright, he said. She keeps bees all over the county. Keep breathing, keep breathing. Do you know where she lives? Oh, sure, it's the darndest house you ever saw. Painted like Pepto-Bismol. Your grandmother surely has seen it. You go through town on Main Street till it turns into the highway to Florence. Pepto-Bismol, what color is that? It is pink. Bright pink. How would you like to have a house that's bright pink? Some of you might like it. Other ones might not be your preference, huh? I walked to the door. Thanks. You tell your grandma hello for me, he said. Rosalind's snores were making the bench slats tremble. I gave her a shake. Wake up, here's your snuff, but put it in your pocket because I didn't exactly pay for it. You stole it? She said. I had to because they don't sell items from the store on Sunday. Your life has gone straight to hell, she said. I spread out our lunch out like a picnic on the bench, but couldn't eat a bite of it till I told her about the Black Mary on the honey jar and the beekeeper named August Boatwright. Don't you think my mother must have known her? I said. It couldn't just be a coincidence. She didn't answer, so I said louder, Rosalind, don't you think so? I don't know what I think, she said. I don't want you getting your hopes up too much is all. She reached over and touched my cheek. Oh, Lily, what have we gone and done? Turbron was a place like Sylvan, minus the peaches. In front of the domed courthouse, someone had stuck a Confederate flag in the mouth of their public cannon. South Carolina was Dixie first, America second. You could not get the pride of Fort Sumter out of us if you tried. Strolling down Main Street, we moved through long blue shadows cast from the two-story buildings that ran the length of the street. At a drugstore, I peered through the plate glass at a soda fountain with chrome trim, where they sold cherry cokes and banana splits, thinking that soon it would not just be for white people anymore. We walked past Worth Insurance Agency, Tiburon County Rural Electric Office, and the Amen Dollar Store, which had hula hoops, swim goggles, and boxes of sparklers in the window with summer fun spray painted across the glass. A few places, like the Farmers Trust Bank, had Goldwater for President signs in their windows, sometimes with a bumper sticker across the bottom saying Affirmation Vietnam. Affirmation, that's another good vocab word. Write that one down too. And think about why there would be bumper stickers that said Affirmation Vietnam. Remember, when they're mentioning Vietnam, it's probably referencing the Vietnam War, right? So what would that mean if they were saying Affirmation Vietnam? At the Tiburon post office, I left Rosaline on the sidewalk and stepped inside to where the post office boxes and the Sunday newspapers were kept. As far as I could tell, there were no wanted posters in there of me and Rosaline, and the front page headline in the Columbia paper was about Castro's sister spying for the CIA, and not a word about a white girl breaking a Negro woman out of jail in Sylvan. I dropped a dime into the slot and took one of the papers, wondering if the story was inside somewhere. Rosalind and I squatted on the ground in an alley and spread out the paper, opening every page. It was full of Malcolm X, Saigon, the Beatles, tennis at Wimbledon, and a motel in Jackson, Mississippi that closed down rather than accept Negro guests, but nothing about me and Rosaline. So right there tells you a lot about everything that's happening, right? Those are the current events. Malcolm X, Saigon, the Beatles, tennis at Wimbledon, and a motel in Jackson, Mississippi, closing down. Sometimes you want to fall on your knees and thank God in heaven for all the poor news reporting that goes on in the world. And that is the end of chapter 3. So we will stop there.